Today, the UK pledges $4.5 billion in loans to help Ukraine defend itself against Russia. Labor promises $650 million for urgent care clinics if re-elected.
Every Australian should have access to the world's best health care, no matter what their income.
The fragile Gaza ceasefire deal expires today with no progress made on a lasting peace. Pope Francis remains stable after a sudden setback in his double pneumonia battle. Hello and welcome to ABC News. I'm Melissa Mackay. Britain will provide a $4.5 billion loan to Kiev for weapons to defend Ukraine against Russia's invasion.
Thank you very much.
The agreement was signed during a visit by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to London, where he received a warm embrace from British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. It contrasted yesterday's talks in Washington when the US president publicly berated the Ukrainian leader and threatened to withdraw American support. Europe Bureau Chief Zoe Ford reports from London.
The optics of the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's visit to London could not be more different to that of his visit to Washington, D.C. As he arrived at number 10 Downing Street here in London, he was greeted by dozens of well-wishers outside, cheering and waving placards. And then as his car pulled up outside number 10, the UK Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer was there to greet him with a handshake and a hug. The pair then posed for the cameras outside the front door before entering for their meeting. Let's take a listen to some of what they talked about at the very start.
You're very, very welcome here in Downing Street. As you heard from the cheers on the street outside, you have full backing across the United Kingdom. And we stand with you, with Ukraine, for as long as it may take. And I hope you heard some of that cheering in the street. That is the people of the United Kingdom coming out to demonstrate how much they support you, how much they support Ukraine, and our absolute determination to stand with you, unwavering determination, and to achieve what we both want to achieve, which is a lasting peace for Ukraine based on sovereignty and security for Ukraine. So important for Ukraine, so important for Europe, and so important for the United Kingdom. So I'm much looking forward to our discussions here this afternoon. Thank you very much for making the time.
With pleasure. Thank you very much, Keir, Mr. Prime Minister, having me here. And really, I saw a lot of people, and I want to thank you, people of the United Kingdom, such big support from the very beginning of this war. Thank you, your team.
That was UK Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer with Volodymyr Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, inside number 10 Downing Street. Then, after the cameras stopped rolling, they had a private meeting behind closed doors, no doubt discussing that extraordinary exchange inside the Oval Office in Washington between Volodymyr Zelensky as well as US President Donald Trump and his Vice President J.D. Vance. Here in London, local time on Sunday morning, President Zelensky is due to meet with King Charles at the request of the UK government. But the meeting to watch on Sunday here will be a summit convened by Sir Keir Starmer of European leaders to discuss Ukraine. We're expecting the French President Emmanuel Macron, Italy's PM Giorgia Meloni, the Prime Minister of Poland Donald Tusk, the outgoing German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, the NATO chief Mark Rutte, the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. The leaders were always convening here in London for this summit on Sunday, but they were expecting to be convening off the back of the Ukrainian president signing a minerals deal with the US. Of course, that didn't happen. So they'll no doubt be discussing what the relationship now is between Ukraine, the US and Europe in the wake of that disastrous Oval Office meeting, as well as security guarantees for Ukraine moving forward. So Keir Starmer is keen, though, to make it very very clear that the European leaders are not ganging up on Donald Trump. Rather, they're coming to help Ukraine work together for peace. Now, what has Russia's reaction been to all of this? Well, we've heard nothing from Vladimir Putin so far. Russian state television has described the exchange in the Oval Office as a diplomatic train wreck, and the Foreign Ministry has described it as a complete diplomatic failure by Kyiv.
Zoe Ford reporting there. The Gaza ceasefire is in a fragile state, with Israel and Hamas unable to agree on the terms of the second phase of the truce. The first 6-week phase ends today, and uncertainty hangs over the region without a clear indication of the path ahead. Middle East correspondent Matthew Doran is in Jerusalem.
Israeli negotiators returned from the Egyptian capital Cairo without a new deal. They'd been trying to turn the existing 6-week ceasefire, which is due to expire on Sunday, into a 12-week ceasefire in a bid to secure the release of more Israeli hostages under the same conditions. But Hamas rejected that proposal, saying Israel was simply stalling, accusing it of kicking the can down the road when it should be focusing on Phase 2 negotiations for a lasting peace in Gaza, formally declaring an end to the war. As they have done every weekend, Israelis are taking to the streets to demand the Netanyahu government secure a Phase 2 deal to get the remaining hostages out. 59 are held in Gaza still, more than 30 believed to be dead. And Hamas has released a new video showing hostage brothers Yair and Eitan Horn just before Yair was released a few weeks back. Eitan, who is still held in Gaza, pleading with the Israeli government not to leave him behind. The Horn family approving use of the video, calling on the Prime Minister to heed Eitan's message. The fact that the deadline for the current ceasefire expires on Sunday doesn't necessarily mean that fighting will immediately resume. While negotiations are ongoing, the fighting is meant to remain paused as the parties try to reach some sort of Phase 2 deal. Although little progress has been made there, those talks were meant to begin weeks ago and they were repeatedly delayed and derailed. Arab leaders will be meeting on Tuesday to try to come up with their own proposal for the future of Gaza, something which could be palatable to both Israel and Hamas to bring an end to this war.
Kurdish militants have declared a ceasefire with Turkey 2 days after their imprisoned leader called for the group to disarm. The group, known as the PKK, says it hopes the Turkish government will release Abdullah Öcalan, who's been held in isolation since 1999. The decision is a major step towards ending a 40-year conflict with the Turkish state in which thousands of people died. Back home, an additional 50 urgent care clinics will open around the country if Labor's re-elected in the upcoming federal poll under a $644 million expansion of the scheme. The new network of clinics was central to Labor's last election campaign, but doctors say they won't solve patient care challenges. Political reporter Stephanie Dalzell joins us now for more. So, Steph, what's the detail in this announcement?
Well, Labor's promising an additional 50 new urgent care clinics if it wins the next election, although that money has already been accounted for in the mid-year budget update. And that builds on the 87 urgent care clinics that Labor already delivered in this term of government. Now, these clinics are bulk billed and you can walk in, and they're designed to treat minor injuries or illnesses like a minor burn or a sprain or a respiratory illness, for example, and to take pressure off emergency departments. Now, last year when Labor announced that it would be going ahead with additional clinics, there was criticism that that was happening without any independent modelling being released. Independent modelling has been commissioned but won't be released until next year. And we've heard from GPs this morning criticising that Labor's going ahead with these or promising these 50 additional urgent care clinics without that modelling being released, saying that the best way to take pressure off emergency departments is to bolster general practice. But the Health Minister, Mark Butler, today defended the decision. Take a listen.
There is no doubt this program is working. It is delivering for Australians and it is having a material impact on our hospital system. For the first time in anyone's memory, I suspect, Category 4 and 5 presentations to EDs, so that is the semi-urgent, non-urgent presentations that this model targets, have flatlined across the country in spite of the fact that this network is by no means ubiquitous. But what we know in those hospitals, that those whose catchment regions have an urgent care clinic, is that their Cat 4 and Cat 5 presentations are actually declining. I mean, this is working.
And Steph, separately, the coalition's vowing to spend $3 billion buying more Joint Strike Fighter aircraft. What do we know about that?
Yes, while Labor's campaigning on health today, the coalition is campaigning on national security. It said it will spend $3 billion if it wins the next election, reinstating the acquisition of additional Joint Strike Fighter aircraft, so increasing that number from 72 to 100. Last year, the federal government halted plans to acquire those additional aircraft, and the coalition says that if it wins the next election, it'll spend $3 billion reinstating them, but it hasn't outlined where that money will come from. Take a listen to Shadow Home Affairs Minister James Patterson on Insiders earlier.
We'll be outlining all of our expenses in the campaign as normal, David, all of our costings at the normal time in the normal way. But as I said, this is a down payment on our commitment to increased and faster defence spending. It was revealed in Senate estimates this week, David, that Labor has already walked away from their commitment only a year ago to spend 2.4% of GDP by the end of the decade. Now looks like it's going to be 2.33% instead of 2.4%, and this is not the time to be walking away from a commitment like that.
The federal government has questioned where this money will come from and has called on the coalition to release its costings.
Stephanie Dalzell in Canberra there, thank you. Overseas, the Vatican says Pope Francis's condition has once again stabilised. The update comes after His Holiness suffered a sudden health setback yesterday. He's now been in hospital for more than 2 weeks and doctors are uncertain about how long his treatment will continue. Michelle Rimmer reports from Rome.
Pope Francis is vigilant, oriented and responding well to oxygen therapy. That's according to the Vatican's latest medical update. In a statement, it said that he does not have a fever, he isn't showing signs of infection and is eating well. His prognosis, however, remains guarded. It's after his condition suddenly worsened due to a breathing crisis on Friday. In an earlier update, the Vatican said that he'd had a peaceful night. He had a coffee with his breakfast and he even read the morning papers. He's able to get out of bed and move around his papal hospital suite. The 88-year-old pontiff was admitted to Rome's Gemelli Hospital more than a fortnight ago with bronchitis and is now known to be battling pneumonia in both lungs. He hasn't been seen in public since he entered hospital and is the longest time he's been out of public view since he began his papacy in 2013. Pope Francis isn't expected to lead his usual Sunday prayers for what will now be the third week in a row. He'll also miss the Ash Wednesday service next week to mark the beginning of Lent. Now for a sixth night in a row, the faithful have gathered here at St Peter's Basilica in Vatican City to pray for his recovery.
At least 4 people have died in a cyclone that hit the French territory of Réunion. Authorities on the Indian Ocean island say one of the victims was found trapped under an uprooted tree. Cyclone Garance has left about 180,000 households without electricity or water. Cyclone Alfred has been downgraded to a Category 2 system, but the Bureau of Meteorology says it's now more likely to turn towards southeast Queensland. Joanna Marie reports from Woodgate Beach near Bundaberg.
You can see behind me that several metres of the beach here at Woodgate has been washed away with these abnormally high tides that we've been seeing in recent days. That's all because of Tropical Cyclone Alfred that's currently about 400 kilometres northeast of Bundaberg, and that is tracking in a south direction parallel to the Queensland coastline and really has been battering the coast with those damaging winds and swell, and we're seeing, high tides that are with the oceans are breaching the tops of the dunes here and causing this significant erosion. The weather system is travelling parallel to the coast, and the Bureau of Meteorology has issued a coastal hazard warning for today in place from 1770 all the way south to the Gold Coast, where today they're predicting that we could see water levels potentially exceeding the highest tide of the year. So this erosion that we're seeing here at Woodgate Beach could potentially worsen today, and it could affect right down the entire southeast Queensland coast to the Gold Coast. The Bureau is saying that now this system, it has been downgraded to a Category 2, and it is tracking south parallel to the coast. But now the Bureau has said that it is more likely that later in the week, Tuesday and into Wednesday, that the system could actually come towards southeast Queensland. So we are going to see the effects of this weather system until, right through the week, until the end of the week potentially.
Joanna Marie reporting there. Staying in Queensland, a magnitude 4.4 earthquake has been recorded southwest of Townsville. Geoscience Australia says around 5,000 people felt the quake, which left 4,000 properties without power. The earthquake struck around 9:30 p.m. local time at a depth of 10 kilometres, with the tremor lasting a few seconds. There are no reports of injuries or significant damage. WA's historic coal mining town of Collie is at the centre of the energy transition debate. The community south of Perth finds itself at the political crossroads of the upcoming state election, leaving residents feeling uncertain about their future.
Coal has defined Collie for well over a century.
The coal mines supply the SEC with 3 million tonnes of coal a year.
In that time, it's shaped lives, even entire families.
Coal mining for me has been the best thing in my life. My youngest son still works for the same company that I did. If you want to put a helmet on, you're welcome, and there's one spare one here.
It's been 3 decades since underground mines like the one Mr Batista used to work on were shut in favour of open-cut operations. Now a new generation of workers is facing upheaval as the WA Labor government looks to transition out of coal altogether by 2030.
I'm very proud of what we've delivered for Collie. We've got a community that understands the transition.
The WA Liberals say there won't be enough renewable energy and want to keep burning coal past 2030.
Nobody in Collie believes that those power stations can be shut down on the current timetable.
While the political debate rages on, those at the coalface have their own ideas.
Some of the workers are in denial and say they don't really want to get away from coal mining. They may get left behind in all of this.
I think in 2030, coal would still be used.
Some of the new industries WA Labor hopes will replace lost coal jobs are yet to lock in final investment. Steel manufacturer Green Steel WA says the private sector and the workforce need more certainty.
The clearer that we can be together, the less this type of thing becomes a political football.
Adding more uncertainty is the federal opposition's pledge to build a nuclear reactor in Collie if elected, prompting mixed feelings from locals.
Why do you want to destroy our land?
Having seen workforce upheaval before, Frank Batista is confident the town will find its way.
It's hard to let go, but we will let go and we'll just evolve and we'll get on with life.
Bridget MacArthur, ABC News, Collie.
One of the most common forms of illnesses for those under the age of 40 is brain cancer. It's also one of the most challenging to treat, leading to many charities lobbying for specialised nurses to help those undergoing treatment.
Matt Stonham was diagnosed with brain cancer in 2015.
I was losing the use of the right-hand side of my body intermittently, and then I've had a seizure and collapsed.
He's been supported by privately funded nurse care coordinators. There are only 20 of these nurses in Australia who solely focus on helping brain cancer patients navigate a complex treatment path.
They always message and say, hey, don't forget your appointment here or your appointment there.
Brain cancer kills more children than any other disease in Australia and more adults aged under 40 than any other cancer. A study in New South Wales found it costs less to treat brain cancer patients who had the help of a nurse coordinator.
The amount of hospital presentations and the overall length of stay was significantly reduced for people who had a brain care coordinator.
12 cancers have been allocated $32 million in federal funding for specific nurse coordinator programs. Of this, the charity Rare Cancers Australia will receive $4.4 million to include the Brain Cancer Nurse Coordinator program. Brain cancer charities are upset they were not separately funded to run their own program.
It is not appropriate or realistic to assign funding to another organisation that doesn't have the understanding or resources to implement the solution.
The department went through a process to ensure that some of the specialist tumour organisations were still able to provide some of that tumour-specific advice.
Rare Cancers Australia says it remains committed to ensuring everyone with rare cancer gets a dedicated cancer navigator as early as possible. Matt is grateful for his cancer coordinators and is in training for a 150-kilometre charity walk from Sydney to Newcastle to raise money for other survivors.
It's just a good thing to do to show support for these people who have been to hell and back.
Hoping for a brighter future for himself and others, Andy Cunningham, ABC News.
Let's get the sport headlines now. Here's Chloe Hart. The young Socceroos have battled their way to glory in the Under-20 Asian Cup, beating Saudi Arabia in a tense penalty shootout in the final in China. It's Australia's first title in the junior tournament's 66-year history. The sides were locked at 1-1 after 120 minutes of play. The match went to a penalty shootout where goalkeeper Brendan Hall proved to be Australia's hero, saving the last of the Saudi Arabian penalties to seal the 5-4 win. The Perth Wildcats are one win away from the grand final after producing one of the greatest NBL fightbacks in the second semi-final against Melbourne United. United led by 20 points before Perth ran over the top to win 96 points to 89 at Perth Arena. Perth's Dylan Windler was the standout, finishing with 27 points. The series now goes to Game 3 on Tuesday night, with the winner advancing to the Championship Series.
Yeah, no, obviously I'm stoked. I don't want the season to end for these guys. We've had a great year. I feel like we're coming along at the right time, so I just didn't want the season to end. And our backs were against the wall, and they said the closeout game is always the hardest one, and we made it hard on them.
In the Men's A-League, Melbourne Victory dramatically snatched a late draw against the Brisbane Roar. Brisbane opened the scoring through Henry Hoare in the 20th minute. Then Casey Boss came up with the vital equaliser in the dying moments to score his first ever A-League goal. Meanwhile, Sydney FC secured a huge boost in the race to seal a final spot, defeating the Macarthur Bulls 2-0 at Campbelltown. In the 72nd minute, substitute Adrian Segicic pinched the Sky Blues' second goal. Here's Sydney FC's Joe Lolly.
Yeah, massive. Results probably weren't the best for us this weekend, so we knew we had to get the win. It's business time now at the end of the season, so we need to pick up the form. But 2 clean sheets in a row is massive for us, and I thought we were in control the whole game and already deserved.
In AFL, Port Adelaide has recorded a convincing 44-point win over St Kilda in their pre-season clash. The Power led from the front, taking a 38-point advantage into the second quarter, holding on to win 14-9-93 to 7-7-49. And the West Coast Eagles have beaten North Melbourne by 2 points in a thrilling match in Bunbury. The Eagles came from behind to win 11-5-71 to the Kangaroos 9-15-69. Jake Waterman kicked 4 goals for West Coast.
It was a bit back and forth. At the start I was a little bit worried, but as you can probably tell, there's a howling wind going down one end, so we knew that if we just took our time in the first and third quarters, that we'd get our go in the second and fourth, and luckily we put a few on the board and got the chockies.
The Chiefs remain top of the Super Rugby Pacific ladder after claiming their third straight win.
In front of a home crowd in Hamilton, the Chiefs defeated the ACT Brumbies 49-34. The Brumbies matched the Chiefs try for try until the final quarter before a converted penalty guided the Chiefs to another win. Elsewhere, the Queensland Reds handed Western Force their first loss of the campaign. The final score 28-24 in Perth. In cricket, England has suffered another heavy 50-over defeat, having been thrashed by 7 wickets by South Africa, bringing an end to a dismal Champions Trophy. South Africa's convincing win means they top the group ahead of fellow semi-finalists Australia. In Game 1 and 2, England went down to Australia and Afghanistan. England was bowled out for 179 runs, the lowest innings total in the tournament to date.
We're disappointed with how we've performed in this tournament, and we've got to put our hands up and acknowledge that it wasn't good enough, and that's okay in sport. You don't get to be upset if you haven't played well. You want to be in the situation of playing international cricket and representing your country and playing in front of the fans all around the world, and sometimes it doesn't work out, and you just got to wear that.
The popularity of Formula One in recent years has seen many kids dreaming of becoming an F1 driver competing around the world. And one Canberra go-karting prodigy is on his way to making his dream a reality.
Most 10-year-olds haven't driven a kart going over 100 kilometres an hour. But Lazarus Añunuevo isn't your average kid.
Other kids usually play football, play other games, read a book.
Not Lazarus. He's driven, quite literally, to achieving success on the racing track. At 10, he is turning heads on go-karting circuits around Australia and overseas.
We were watching Drive to Survive when I was 4. I was like, whoa, look at these F1 cars. They go so fast. And when my dad came through the door, I was like, Dad, this is what I want to do. And my dad was like, what's that?
I think it was our second weekend here practicing. A team driver from Queensland comes up to me, he goes, you better have a lot of money. And I was like, what for? He goes, this is his second session and look at how late he's braking, how fast he's attacking those corners. Your son has something special.
Supporting Lazarus on his journey to Formula One has been a family affair.
They come to every single race meeting. They go, go Lazarus, go, go, go. I'm thankful that they're here to watch me.
And the hard work and sacrifices are paying off. Lazarus recently signed for Gold Kart International as a team driver in Italy, where he'll spend 3 months training and competing with the best young racers in the world.
Hard work and dedication go hand in hand. We think that that's what's going to get him into Formula One.
Other 10-year-olds might just crack under all this pressure. So, how does Lazarus stay focused?
I sing inside my helmet. Sometimes I sing Smooth Operator.
Keeping a cool head on Hot Wheels. Zach Schrodel, ABC News, Canberra.
Let's check the weather in the capitals now. A possible shower for Brisbane and Sydney. Partly cloudy for Canberra, top of 33 degrees there. A shower or two clearing in Melbourne. Partly cloudy for Hobart and Adelaide. Sunshine for Perth and mostly sunny in Darwin. There's more news on the ABC News app and of course on ABC iView. I'm Melissa Mackay. Thanks for your company. Stay with us.